Friends, just imagine. If one day an entire village, no but 115 people including children, women and the elderly, suddenly vanished overnight, leaving behind no sound, no trace, only empty houses and a strange silence. Would you believe it? This isn't a movie plot, but real history, a mystery that, to this day, is considered the most terrifying unsolved mystery in American history. The year was 1587, when some settlers from England set out to settle in the New World, America. Their dream was to make a new beginning, but little did they know that their name would forever be known as the Lost Colony of Roanoke. Yes, the same colony that later became known as America's first ghost colony, because everyone who lived there vanished without a trace. No signs of struggle, no bloodstains, no bodies, no skeletons, nothing. All that remained were some wooden walls and a single word, CROATOAN, carved into a tree. That word still baffles historians to this day. Was it the name of some mysterious tribe? Or part of a secret message they wrote in their final moments? No one knows. But this mystery is over 400 years old and still inspires the same chills. Friends, welcome to my channel, where we try to solve the world's mysteries, the answers to which history itself has hidden. If you like mysterious stories, lost civilizations, and unsolved mysteries, then be sure to watch this video to the end, because today's story isn't just history, but the most terrifying tale of human disappearance. And yes, the face you see in the thumbnail isn't just a figment of imagination, but a symbol of that terrible night when the lights of the Roanoke colony went out forever. Now the question is, were those people killed, or were they taken away by some invisible force? Or, did they flee to some mysterious place on their own? I have my own theory, and I promise it will give you goosebumps by the end of this video. So let's begin the story of the mystery that is recorded in history books as the Lost Colony of Roanoke. The year was the 1580s. During the reign of Queen Elizabeth I of England, all of Europe was driven by a mad race for exploration and expansion. Spain and England were locked in a constant struggle over the sea routes. Both countries coveted the New World, the Americas, where gold, land, and endless possibilities lay hidden. Spain had already arrived there and had begun amassing vast wealth by establishing numerous settlements in Central and South America. Every ship laden with gold and silver became a challenge and a jealousy for England. Queen Elizabeth wanted England to establish its foothold in this new world, to counter Spain. At this time, Sir Walter Raleigh, a daring explorer and ambitious man, emerged. Raleigh was not just a traveler, he was a dreamer. He was convinced that establishing an English colony in America would be the hallmark of Great Britain in the future. He wanted England, like Spain, to demonstrate its power in the New World through the three weapons of gold, land, and the spread of religion. This idea later became known as the concept of gold, glory, and God gold, meaning wealth and resources. Glory, meaning honoring one's nation and king. And God, meaning serving God by spreading Christianity. These three words together changed the course of an entire century. Every exploratory ship set out with these three goals, some to become rich, some to become immortal, and some to carve a place in history in the name of God. As part of this mission, Raleigh planned to establish a new colony in America, where English citizens would live, farm, and trade. He believed that this colony would prove to be England's greatest achievement and that England would eventually expand its empire across the globe. Queen Elizabeth granted his permission, and the mysterious land of America was named Virginia in her honor, because Queen Elizabeth was known as the Virgin Queen. Raleigh quickly assembled his team, arranged for ships, and began preparations to send a few brave families to America. Little did anyone know that this journey would become one of history's most terrifying turning points. They thought they were laying the foundation for a new civilization, but in reality, they were setting foot on what would later become known as the Lost Colony of Roanoke. And thus began the journey, a dream for the British, but a curse for history. The year was 1585. A group of 100 English soldiers set sail from England to turn Sir Walter Raleigh's dream into reality. They were led by Sir Richard Grenville and Ralph Lane. After several months of sea travel, they arrived at Roanoke Island, located off the coast of present-day North Carolina. They chose this location because it was surrounded by water, providing protection from enemies, and the soil appeared fertile. Initially, everything seemed promising, but gradually the dream began to give way to the harsh reality of reality. Food supplies were limited, and agricultural efforts were consistently unsuccessful. Rains decreased, crops withered, and fishing failed. Local Native American tribes, previously friendly, became increasingly resentful of the English. Conflicts and violence broke out in many places, and the situation gradually deteriorated to the point where the soldiers had to build fort-like outposts to save their lives. Hunger, disease, and hostility combined to turn the colony into a living hell. Then came a turning point. Francis Drake, a renowned English sea captain, unexpectedly arrived. He was returning from America with his ship and saw these soldiers, starving and despondent. Drake offered them a return to England, and nearly all of them boarded his ship. Left behind were broken forts, empty huts, and unfulfilled hopes. The dream of the first Roanoke colony collapsed in just a year. But this failure taught the English a profound lesson, that the New World was not just an adventure, but a true test of survival. Looking at this story today, it sounds like something out of a modern survival show. The only difference is that today, cameras roll, while back then, lives were at stake. Back then, no one had food, no water, no GPS, yet they still hoped they were doing something great. Today we see people lighting fires, fishing, and enduring hardships on survival shows, but the soldiers of Roanoke did it all centuries ago in real life, without reward, without cameras, and without help. Their failure became a lesson for England, that it wasn't just courage but also resources, understanding, and cooperation that could sustain a colony. And perhaps it was this lesson that inspired Raleigh to make a second attempt, one that would later prove to be one of history's most mysterious disappearances. The year was 1587, and England had learned a great deal from its previous failure. This time, the mission's purpose wasn't just to establish an outpost, but to establish a true colony, a permanent home. This time, not just soldiers, but families, women, children, and even farmers were part of the journey. A total of approximately 115 people, including 17 women and 9 children, set sail from England. Leading them was John White, himself an artist, explorer, and visionary. Raleigh appointed him governor of the mission because John White possessed a remarkable blend of both art and leadership. He didn't just make maps, but captured every scene in his paintings as if it were history. His drawings still provide a glimpse of that era, one where hope and excitement ran hand in hand. July 1587, the ship Lion finally anchored off the coast of Roanoke Island. As the settlers stepped ashore, excitement and relief were evident on their faces. They began building a small log house on the very first day. It was their first home, and nothing less than a dream for them. The greenery all around, the cool ocean breeze, and the scent of new land, all filled their hearts with hope for a new beginning. People smiled and said to each other, "This time will last." Children played in the sand, women leveled the soil, and men felled trees and laid the foundations of their homes. Everyone felt they were laying the foundations of a new England, where their children would live free, work hard, and prosper. August 1587, a warm afternoon on Roanoke Island. The sound of ocean waves echoed in the air, and a tiny cry echoed among the wooden houses. That moment was forever etched in history, for on that very day Virginia Dare was born, the first English child born on American soil. Her birth was not just a family's joy, but a symbol of the birth of a new world. Everyone considered it a good omen, that perhaps fate was now with this English colony. People said, "Now our roots are planted here. Now this place is ours." She became the heartbeat of Roanoke. Every woman holding her in her arms felt hope for the future. Virginia's parents, Eleanor and Ananias Dare, would smile at her and say, "You are the first hope born on this land." But where there was joy, there was also a shadow of tension. Relations with the local Croatan and Secautan tribes were beginning to deteriorate. Clashes over trivial matters, accusations of theft, and an air of fear were slowly growing. Food shortages were returning, and some native leaders began to perceive the British presence as a threat. John White, the colony's governor, wrote in his diary every night, "Our joy is turning to worry. We are no longer welcome here." Now imagine, if Virginia Dare could speak at such a young age, if she had her own diary, she might have written something like this. "Today I saw so many stars in the sky. Mother said, they all shine for me. Father says we are the first people in a new land. But I don't understand why these people stare at us. Why is there so much hatred in their eyes? Can't this land be ours? Does this sand I play in belong to someone else?" Even hearing these imaginary words of that innocent child makes one's heart tremble. The child who had become a symbol of new beginnings was unknowingly about to become part of history's most mysterious tragedy. Virginia Dare's birth was like a flame of hope, but time soon turned that flame into darkness. Time passed, but the land of Roanoke was no longer so kind. Crops were drying up, fish were scarce, and the waves of the sea seemed to bring the message of hunger, not food. John White encouraged the people every day, but now, instead of smiles, there were lines of worry on their faces. Relations with the native tribes continued to deteriorate. Misunderstandings, language barriers, and food fights turned both sides into enemies. Then came the tragedy that broke everyone's hearts. George Howe, White's close companion, was out fishing, and some Native Americans attacked and killed him. When his body was found, the entire camp was stunned. This was the first major blow to the colony. Everyone began to feel that it might be impossible to survive. Vigilance was increased every night, and fires were kept dim to prevent the enemy from seeing them from afar. People lived in hunger and fear, as if every sound hid a threat. John White decided something had to be done. To save the colony, he had to return to England to bring new supplies and help. But before leaving, he gave everyone some instructions. If the colony was forced to evacuate, they were to sail to a nearby safe island and leave a mark. The mark would be CROATOAN, the name of the nearby island and tribe. If in danger, they were to mark the mark with a cross, X. In other words, if there was a cross next to CROATOAN, something terrible had happened. White promised his people, "I will return soon, and I will not leave you alone." But a historical event broke this promise. At that very moment, war broke out between Spain and England. The Spanish Armada, a vast navy, was preparing to attack England. All of England's ships were engaged in the war, and White was unable to find a ship for his colony. Months of delay turned into years. White yearned, but he could not return. Meanwhile, the 115 people of Roanoke looked up at the sky every day, perhaps wondering, why hasn't our captain returned yet? In 1590, 3 full years later, John White finally returned to the land where he had founded his colony, where he had held his granddaughter, Virginia Dare, and where the lives of 115 people had been entrusted to him. As his ship approached Roanoke Island, cutting through the waves, his heart pounded, hope, fear, and anxiety swirled within him simultaneously. He thought, perhaps the colony would have grown by now, the fields would be green, the children would have grown. But as he reached the shore, there was silence, a silence that sent shivers down his spine. Where once there had been rows of houses, there were now only charred logs and empty huts. No people, no sounds. Only the gusts of wind, striking the ashes of the old houses, created an eerie echo. White ran toward his old home, but there too was only emptiness. No clothes, no utensils, no bodies, nothing. Everything was gone, as if life had vanished from here. Then he noticed a word carved on a tree. CROATOAN. It was the same code he had mentioned when leaving, but it wasn't accompanied by a cross. Perhaps it wasn't a threat, but a signal. White's heart began to pound. Did they go to CROATOAN Island? He had the site excavated, inspected the remains of the houses, but found no signs of a struggle, no broken walls, no blood, no corpses. Just a few abandoned pots, some old books, and a few unfinished tools. It seemed as if everyone had suddenly gotten up and left, without any haste, without any trace. White looked out to sea. A light haze hung in the air, as if the entire land was shrouded in a veil of some invisible mystery. His companion said, "Governor, perhaps the storm swept everything away." But White felt deep within, no, it's something else. The word CROATOAN kept echoing in his mind, like a secret message concealing history. Now imagine, the camera slowly pans back, the wind blows between empty houses, window panes rattle, and a child's faint laughter is heard, somewhere far away on that barren island. Was it Virginia Dare? Or someone else's shadow? No one knows. The Roanoke colony had vanished, without a fight, without a voice, and without an answer. For the first time in history, a colony had wiped out its entire existence. And that moment, Roanoke became America's greatest mystery, the Lost Colony. The biggest question in history remains the same: where did the 115 people of Roanoke go? When John White returned, only the word CROATOAN remained. Everything else had been erased. But several theories emerged, each of which sounds like a movie plot. The first theory, the assimilation theory, says that English settlers may have assimilated into the nearby native CROATOAN tribe. Some DNA projects have found European genes in Native Americans, which further strengthens this theory. Another theory suggests that Spanish soldiers may have attacked, given the fierce hostility between England and Spain at the time. However, no evidence has been found to support this theory. A third theory suggests that everyone died of starvation and disease, and that their remains were destroyed over time. Old tools and human remains found at some sites raise this possibility. Another mysterious theory is that some people fled into the forests due to internal conflict or fear, and never returned. Old British material found at several archaeological sites suggests that these people may have gradually dispersed in different directions. Recent DNA projects and discoveries by the Lost Colony Archaeological Group indicate that some Roanoke people may have actually assimilated into native tribes, that is, lost may have become merged. If I were to share my favorite theory, I believe the Roanoke people assimilated into the CROATOAN tribe. They must have had to choose this path for survival. Now the question is, what do you think? Was this colony wiped out by an enemy, or did it transform into a new identity? Tell us in the comments, what do you think the truth about the Roanoke people was? A disease, a murder, or a mystery? The mystery of Roanoke remains a mystery not just in history books, but even today, it remains a puzzle for scientists and researchers. DNA studies conducted in the 2010s shed some light. Genes were found in some Native Americans that matched 16th-century European genes from England. Perhaps these same Roanoke people assimilated into the CROATOAN tribe. Additionally, ancient tools, utensils, and iron objects found at Hatteras Island and surrounding archaeological sites strengthen this theory. But the question remains unanswered. Why did the entire colony suddenly disappear? Many historians believe that climate change and stormy weather may have also threatened their survival. Some artifacts and soil samples suggest that they may have dispersed into smaller groups and gradually assimilated into native tribes. Combined with today's migration stories, Roanoke teaches us that sometimes people assimilate to survive in new places, losing some of their old identities, leaving only traces and traces in history. This means that Roanoke is not just a lost colony, but also a story of human struggle and unresolved migration. Every new discovery, every DNA report, and every lost object reminds us that history remains an open mystery. Today, researchers continue to excavate Roanoke every year, and as weather and natural changes occur, new clues emerge. Perhaps in the coming decade, we will know the truth, or perhaps history will still hold us in mystery. Therefore, Roanoke has become a symbol not just of the past, but also of today's discovery and hope for the future. So friends, this was the complete story of the Roanoke colony, a colony established in 3 years, full of hopes and dreams, that suddenly disappeared with 115 people and remains history's greatest mystery even today. Roanoke isn't just a colony, but a symbol of the foundation and early efforts of American history. He tells us that establishing roots in the New World wasn't easy. Hunger, hostility, weather, and human conflict always tested humanity. Now let's get a little fun. Some say, maybe the people of Roanoke flew away with aliens. Imagine brother Virginia Dare, wearing a tiny space helmet in her hand, saying, "Mom, Dad, how beautiful this new planet is." Pause of laughter. Even in jest, it shows that the mysteries of history sometimes become even more exciting in our imagination. So now I ask you, what's your theory? Mixed with the natives, swept away by a storm, Spanish invasion, or were they really aliens? Leave your opinion in the comments below. I'll be sure to read it. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next mystery story.